Hi, I'm Glenn Parker. Welcome to Aiken This Week. Our guest today is McDonald Law. McDonald is a local architect. Most of you will know. I think, McDonald, you spent most of your adult career here in Aiken.
Correct.
But today we're interviewing McDonald as chairman of the Design and Review Board for the City of Aiken. So, McDonald, first, welcome to Aiken This Week.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm glad to have you. Tell us how long you've been on the Design Review Board.
Well, came on in 1997, and so if I'm calculating my years correctly, that's about 18 years.
Okay, and who appointed you at the time?
The mayor, not Mayor Weeks, but Mayor Kavanaugh.
Now, you're currently the chairman. How long have you been the chairman?
Probably 12 years or so.
Okay. Okay. Now, tell our audience who the other members of the Design Review Board.
Well, we have 7 members all total. Lucy Knowles is the vice chair, and then we also have Chuck Herbst and Don Broderick, Valise Cummings, Ben Lott, and Josh Stewart. I believe those are the other 6.
The other 6. Okay. And I know you guys have a lot of broad topics. What's the primary role, though, of the Design Review Board?
Well, it is to review any proposed changes in the exterior of buildings in historic districts or the Old Aiken Overlay District. People who want to make a change need to come to the Design Review Board, come to one of our meetings and show us what they are anticipating doing, and then we usually help assist them in coming up with something that maintains the character of their neighborhood.
Okay. You're an architect. I know Josh Stewart is a contractor, a construction contractor. Are there particular requirements to be on the design board?
I think the original ordinance referenced that you should, if available, you should have a licensed architect on the board, as well as a person with some knowledge of architectural history. Now, you mentioned a couple of the others have experience in engineering, and then one of our guys has construction experience, and also we have an attorney. So those are all helpful in terms of reviewing applications.
Okay. How long has the Design Review Board been in existence for the city?
Well, it actually began as the Historic Preservation Commission. You may be aware. I think that was in 1990, and then in 2005, the downtown was added in as an overlay district. The downtown Old Aiken Overlay District is what it's called.
Okay.
And that would be the business district. The historic district is all residential. And so the name of our board was changed at that point to Design Review Board.
Okay. A lot of times committees in the city, other than the real basic ones that all cities have, they form or they start out of a cause or a need or something of that nature. Is that what happened here? Or?
Well, there may have been a related instance that happened about the same time that the Design Review Board, our Historic Preservation Commission, and districts came into being. I remember that in about 1990, the chamber was needing to find a new location that would have been on a major thoroughfare, visible and accessible. And there were 2 older homes on Richland Avenue that were in disrepair and unoccupied, obviously. And so that seemed to be maybe an ideal site. It's actually 1 block up from what's now an auto parts store. I think that had been a grocery store maybe. So this looked like a possibility for the chamber, but at the time a lot of the downtown residents had concerns about more and more demolition of older properties, and so the chamber backed away. I'm not sure it was maybe it was a planning commission rezoning or something that would have been required. And it turned out it was a win-win situation. The Aiken Corporation actually located several parcels that included 2 abandoned service stations, which we really didn't need downtown. And so that's the current site of the chamber.
Right.
In the meantime, this generated enough publicity regarding the old houses that two new owners came forward, purchased those properties, and then renovated them. And now they're occupied, attractive older homes.
Interesting. That's interesting. I had Liz Stewart on just a couple of weeks ago, and she spoke of, obviously with her role in the Planning Commission, the zoning ordinance, and that's guides the Planning Commission. I see you have a manual here with you. What does the Design Review Board use as their guidance when they make decisions?
Yeah, good. That's a very good question. We actually have two design guideline manuals. One would be for the historic district. That's the Design Review Manual. That's the name of it. It's this blue book we've had since about 1990, I guess. That covers the historic district, and it is tied back into the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for historic preservation. Now, for the overlay district, the commercial district and the residential districts, we use the Old Aiken Design Guidelines booklet.
Okay.
And that's not quite as stringent. It doesn't tie back into historic preservation necessarily, although some of the same principles would apply of using compatible materials and generally maintaining the same scale of the existing buildings that are already there.
If someone is considering making a change to a home or a building or something of that nature, prior to coming to the board, are these documents online that they could access those?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
They can be downloaded and printed, and also if you wanted to purchase a copy, they're available at the planning department that is the second floor of the municipal building.
Okay, so they're on the city's website. Okay, I want to make a change to my home. How do I come before the Design Review Board? What's the process to get me in front of the board?
Okay, well, the first thing would be to get an application, which you can also download from the City of Aiken Planning Department website. You could download that, or you could pick one up from the Planning Department in the municipal building. And essentially that just has a place for you to describe what the changes would be, and then it does have a requirement that you provide some drawings. You don't need complete architectural drawings, but scale drawings are pretty critical. The better the drawing, probably the more success you may have in getting approval. Now, the other thing to check would be the dates for our meetings. There's a deadline that you would need to meet. It would be 3 weeks before the actual meeting, and we meet the first Tuesday of every month at 6:30. Now we have a work session at 5:30. The public's welcome to come to that. That's informal, and probably I would advise someone if they had an addition or new construction in either the historic district or overlay district to come to a work session. And then they can discuss informally what their plans are and maybe get some input from the board before it gets voted up or down. And then, of course, you would come a month later to the actual meeting at 6:30.
I would think it might also be helpful for someone, if they know they've got something coming up, just to come sit in on a meeting, not actively, but just to listen and see how the board works and what kind of information you guys are looking for.
Yeah, that'd be a great thing to do. Come to the work session and stay on and see how others come to the meeting, and you come forward and to the lectern and give your name, and then are available for questions. And then, of course, we have an opportunity for the public to comment, either pro or con, on the application as well.
And you meet here. I don't think we said that. You meet here in the council chambers.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the historic district. Tell us define the historic district for us, where it is, and sort of what's the layout of the district.
Yeah. Well, the historic district came into being probably in phases. So some people might think that we have more than one, but actually it's just one contiguous district now. And Generally, that would start west of the downtown on Hayne Avenue, and go over to Barnwell, and then work its way to the downtown, and then it sort of skips over the downtown because that becomes the overlay district, and then it picks up again just south of the downtown, and mostly the neighborhoods that are on the south side of the railroad cut. It also goes into some equestrian properties that are along Whiskey Road. So that's then one entire historic district.
Okay. Why do we need historic districts?
Yeah, I guess that's maybe where we should have started.
Yeah.
I think you probably need to define what it is first. What a historic district would be a neighborhood that in which most of the residences are 75 or 100 years old, and when you have a number of properties, predominantly from a particular era, then it does change the character, and usually to the good. Most people enjoy driving or walking down the street in an older neighborhood. Some of that has to do with the architecture, with the buildings. The residences have different architectural detailing. Most of them have porches. They relate to the street probably better than our newer subdivisions. So that gives you an overall kind of character that kind of defines what our downtown is. So I think for that reason, most people feel like that historic districts help us preserve the character and quality of life of our city.
Sure. Are historic districts typical to southern cities? Do you see that a lot?
You do. Probably they began in Charleston, and that was maybe one of the first in the country with design review and guidelines. And but now most cities that have neighborhoods that are in that range of 75, 100 years old would realize that they need to protect that, or they disappear, and then the character changes.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think how to say. If a city doesn't want to protect that history, then they may not have a historic overlay.
Right. The next generation wouldn't be able to experience that, and sometimes we have older buildings that are torn down, and we still have photographs of the buildings, and now we look back and wish they were still there.
Sure. Sure. All right, you mentioned there's an overlay district basically in the downtown area. Tell us about the overlay district and why that exists.
Well, I think I mentioned that about 2005, there was enough interest from our residents in having the same kind of review process for commercial buildings as we had for residential. And at that time, you could pretty much do anything you wanted downtown. And there were probably some merchants who were wary of this, but I think now that it's been in place for 10 years or so, it's a very smooth process. It's not as stringent, as I said, as the actual historic district, but it does allow some review process to step back and look and consider what the impact would be of changing a storefront.
Okay.
And the city's actually assisted with changes that do meet these guidelines by offering a facade grant up to a certain amount. I believe it's a matching grant, and that is renewed every year, and I think that program still has been used quite frequently.
Where is the overlay district? You defined sort of the historic district. Tell us where the overlay fits in.
Well, it's going to be obviously the business district, our downtown, but it also continues, because it's the old Aiken overlay district, it continues on eastward to encompass some of the residential neighborhoods that aren't in historic districts, mostly eastward down Richland Avenue east.
Okay. Sort of some of where the older warehouses were and some businesses down through there at times. Okay. You talked about demolition earlier, you mentioned that. If someone wanted to take down a building in either of these districts, what's the process of doing that? What do they have to bring to the committee, the board?
They need to apply for a certificate of appropriateness for demolition. They also need to bring some rendition of what they're proposing. And then lastly, they need to show evidence of the condition of the structure and the reason, other than economic reasons, the reason that they're proposing demolition. And we don't encourage, obviously, demolition of structures, particularly in the historic district. But a lot would depend on whether this is a key or landmark property. And that would be like a Banksia or the Green Boundary. A number of our what we call key properties have a special protection. Palmetto Golf Club's another that comes to mind.
Okay.
Now then, there are contributing properties that are they're still older properties, mostly single family, that would be important. Would be, we would not be encouraging demolition of those unless there were some real extreme circumstances to do with the structure and the ability to renovate and restore. And we do require a letter from an engineer, structural engineer, on the condition of the building. Non-contributing properties would not be so much of a problem, and that would be homes or buildings that are probably less than 50 years old. But you have to go through this long process, and we do have those from time to time.
You mentioned earlier you don't require architectural drawings. Obviously, that's to the benefit, I think, of the applicant. But if they can, with home computers and everything we have the ability to do today, if they can lay it out to sort of show their message, show what they're wanting to do, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, and I again emphasize a scale drawing because a lot of people now do have programs on home computers, and you can draw lots of things, but it just needs to be a scale drawing.
Okay. If once the design review board makes their decision, whatever it is, where does it go from there?
Well,
does it go to council?
No.
Okay.
If they get a motion that is approved for them to move forward with their project, a certificate of appropriateness is sent out to them. It takes a week or so, and once they receive that, they've got permission to make the changes that are shown on their drawing. Occasionally things will come up, in which case they may need to come back and say, this particular window wasn't available. Can I substitute this window? And generally that can be approved administratively.
Okay.
That would be the step that you would go through if it's approved. Now, if it's not approved, I think that's probably another part of the answer here. You can obviously change your application, modify it somehow, and then come back the following month. Often during meetings or in work sessions, we can arrive at a compromise where that modified a motion is approved, by a majority vote. So you still are able to move forward. You could, if it's very important that you do exactly like you propose it, you can wait a year and you can resubmit and see what happens.
Okay.
And then finally, the last resort would be to go to court, and that's not happened very frequently.
Right.
But the court can, our regular district court can hear that as an appeal to the court. Okay.
And we're not here to obviously talk about specific projects that have come before the group at all. But if I'm moving into the community and I'm thinking, okay, I may want to purchase a home in the historic district. What are some of the advantages to living maybe in the historic, or maybe disadvantages to living there?
Well, I'm a little prejudiced in terms of the advantages over disadvantages.
Sure you are.
The advantages, of course, I think the main one would be property values. Generally are higher in historic districts. And then probably just as importantly is the stability of the neighborhood long term. And you very seldom would see a historic district, the whole district fall into disrepair. Generally people maintain, historic properties on a regular basis. And so I think just in terms of the stability of the neighborhood, there would be some obvious advantages. And then of course there's the character that you have that is difficult to replace in new subdivisions. Some neo-traditional neighborhoods that people are becoming more and more aware of are able to duplicate that. But if you've already got that character, why not take advantage of that and of course preserve it.
Enhance it, so to say. Okay. Oh, you talked about appealing a decision earlier. We talked about that. If someone comes before the board and they win an approval, they sell their home and a new owner comes in and he wants to go back to the original something, change it back to the way it was, for lack of a better term. Does that come back to the board for those kind of decisions?
Anything that that changes the current exterior, and we didn't make that clear, but these really are modifications that are viewed and visible from the street.
It's a good point. Yes.
So that's the first test is for our staff to look at it and even go out to the property and just determine if this is something visible. But if they want to change it back, it kind of depends on what they want to change it back to. But we really, I don't think, have had that situation, but you never can tell what's going to happen in the future.
I believe for years this was Susan French's baby, if you will. She loved working with this group. Now Susan's retired from the city. Who are you working with now from the planning department? What's the relationship between the board and the planning department? Yeah,
well, we do have a new city staffer who has a planning degree from the College of Charleston. His name's Ron Hanna, and he's been on several months, and he's been able to pick up from where Susan left off, and he's actually the secretary of the Design Review Board. Okay. But he also handles interface with the public, with applicants that come in, and he's in the planning department. He's the one you would see if you had a project you wanted to begin in the historic or overlay district.
He's the one you go to get it on the agenda, so to say. Okay. Now, you mentioned facade grants, and I know those are for downtown. Are there incentive programs in the historic district for homeowners?
Yeah.
How does those?
Yeah. And even perhaps outside the historic district, if the building can be established as a historic property. And that might hold true for some downtown properties, actually. Most of these, this is a tax incentive program that's actually a state law the city has adopted that allows the city and the county property taxes to be frozen at the level of the appraisal before you make your improvements. Now, there are some guidelines that are important, and the primary one is to document what was there or what is there currently before any changes are made, and then it would depend on what changes you were making, whether this particular project would be eligible for the tax incentive. But we've had a number of those, and this is interior work as well as exterior. So that's one area that the Design Review Board, probably the only area where we actually review improvements and changes on the interior of a structure. I'll just say the specifics, if I can remember correctly. I believe that the prior original appraisal is frozen for 2 years.
Okay.
And then after that, for the next 8 years, it's frozen either at that level, original level, or 40% of the new appraised value, whichever is greater. So you have about a 10-year window there that you can take advantage of that tax incentive program.
I hope this is an appropriate question. We didn't talk about this prior to, but if I want to make changes, what are changes I can make at my home without coming to the design review board?
Well, any repairs that you need to make where there's siding coming off of your house, a fence is always needing repairs. Repairs you don't have to come to the board. Some people would be confused about that. If they're putting back what was already there, then there's no reason to come. We also mentioned things that are not visible from the street.
Putting back same color, same material,
Right.
all of that
Right.
has
If
to
it's
be appropriate.
That's right. If it's already painted, and you want to repaint, you can do that. Now, if you're changing something that wasn't painted and you want to paint it, that would come back to us.
Sure. Sure. Okay. What have we missed? Have we not covered anything that we need to talk about?
I think you've done a good job of getting covering a lot of our of territory.
Okay.
We appreciate the interest and the participation that we've had with residents. Most people that come to our board, I think, come away with a positive experience and realize the advantages that they have in living in our downtown neighborhoods.
Okay. Tell us again when you meet. The third.
It is the first Tuesday, and we meet in the council chambers downtown on Park Avenue.
Okay.
We meet first Tuesday at 6:30, but then we have the work session that we encourage applicants to come to as well. That's at 5:30.
Okay. And if someone wants to get an item on that agenda, they need to contact Ron Hanna in the planning department and submit their items 3 weeks prior to, not just contact, but make sure everything's submitted so he can review, staff can review, and
That's
it's
right.
a public agenda, so I think the agenda goes out. Everybody can see those things.
That's right, and it actually, signs will be put up, so that's why you need that lead time.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's been interesting, educational for me to have you on today.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about Design Review Board.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for watching Aiken this week. We have the mayor coming up in a couple of weeks. It'll be an interesting show to talk with him, and we'll do that toward the end of October. Have a great week. Thank you.